We have just crossed the halfway point in the longest season in F1 history, and after about 13 races, I think it's pretty fair to say that there is one team out there with a car better than the rest, and it's not who you would have expected. You see, after getting off to a pretty slow start at the beginning of the season, McLaren and both of their drivers have really started to pick things up as of late. I mean, we've got Lando Norris winning McLaren's first race of the season back in Miami around May. And that was a big deal for several reasons. First off, it was McLaren's first team win in about 3 years since Daniel Ricciardo did his thing in Monza, Italy. But more importantly, it was Lando Norris's first ever career one in F1, something he has been getting very close to accomplishing for about the last 2 or 3 years at this point. And let me tell you, Lando Norris is no stranger when it comes to finishing in second, as he has done it 5 times this year alone. And his most recent second place finish is probably his most controversial. And don't worry, we will get to Hungary in a second. But for right now, I just wanted to remind everybody watching to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 5,000. Every subscription goes a long way and is much appreciated. But anyway, let's get back to talking about Lando Norris, who has had great race after great race since China back in April. I mean, this guy has had 7 out of his last 9 finishes be on the podium for a total of 8 podium appearances this season. And that's probably why we see Lando Norris sitting at second in the Drivers' Championship, behind only Max Verstappen, of course. And why is he sitting second? Well, I mean, Lando Norris has 189 points this season, and those 189 points go a long way as to why McLaren as a team is also sitting at second in the Constructors' Championship. I'm telling you right now, no one does second place better than Lando Norris, of all people. But he isn't the sole reason McLaren is doing so well in the Constructors' Championship. I mean, that other 149 points has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is his teammate Oscar Piastri, who until as of late was having a pretty under the radar season at McLaren, with him being able to put up good, even great performances back to back. And yet, he had always been overshadowed by Mr. Lando Norris himself. And of course, that all changed overnight after what happened in Hungary over this past weekend, with Oscar Piastri winning his first ever F1 race of his very young career. And while he may have finished in first and his teammate in second, there wasn't much celebrating going on in McLaren's garage, as the situation that led up to it was pretty awkward. I mean, we've got an Oscar Piastri who took the lead from Lando Norris early on, I want to say after like the first turn, and held on to it for about 40 good laps. And then this is where McLaren's strategy comes in and absolutely destroys them, because their plan to defend against a Lewis Hamilton, who was their only real threat throughout this entire race, was to have, I want to say, Lando Norris pit earlier than Oscar Piastri, so that Lewis Hamilton doesn't end up surging past one or even both of McLaren's drivers, and then they lose that 1-2 finish. And of course, because Lando Norris pits a lap or 2 earlier than Piastri, he's able to undercut him and take the lead away from his teammate. But of course, this was done with the mindset that Lando Norris was gonna give first place back eventually, after they got a safe distance away from the rest of the competition. And as the race went on and on, McLaren's gap from the rest of the competition got larger and larger, and it was becoming more evident that, Lando Norris was going to need to give up that first place sooner rather than later. And the issue really began when, the McLaren team were calling in, telling Lando Norris to give him the Oscar Piastri's first place back, and he was pretty hesitant. In fact, for most of the race, he wasn't replying to any of McLaren's requests. And that got things really awkward, as we were about 3 laps away from this race ending, and Lando Norris was still sitting in first place. Of course, eventually, as we now know, he ended up giving that first place back to Oscar Piastri, but by the time he did, things were already really awkward. And you might be wondering why Lando Norris was so hesitant to give Piastri his first place back. And he had a few good reasons as to why. I mean, number one, he needed all the points he could get for the Drivers' Championship, as he does have a real shot at closing in on Max Verstappen, who hasn't won in 3 races in a row at this point. I mean, Max Verstappen, is he falling off? I don't know, maybe. I mean, his car has gotten worse, or maybe the competition has just caught up to Red Bull's car. But anyway, you know, Lando Norris has a real shot at winning the Drivers' Championship. And those 7 points are going to be very vital. You know, 7 points is the difference between first and second place, which is why he didn't want to hand it back to Piastri. He also believed that had they not done the thing where he ended up undercutting his teammate, eventually he was going to fight Piastri and overtake him anyway. And towards the end, it did look like Lando Norris was faster than Piastri. I mean, Lando Norris was telling Piastri to catch up to him if he wanted it so bad, and the distance only grew and grew between the two of them. So could you have argued that had they not done the little undercut where they were trying to protect themselves, that Lando Norris ends up winning this race by just passing his teammate? Possibly, but that isn't what happened, okay? And the undercut only took place because the team agreed that it would go back to Piastri, first place would. And you know, Lando Norris did give it back, right? But Piastri didn't even get to celebrate his big win. And if things didn't go Oscar Piastri's way, well, let me just tell you, this second half of the season for McLaren would have gotten a lot more awkward. I mean, there are still 11 races left to go here, and it is still a long way from determining who is going to win both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. I mean, both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri have been trying to build up their chemistry for about 1.5 to 2 seasons now. And they've looked great together. They seem very friendly. They even give off BFF energy. But after this Hungary race, the tension is only going to build up from here, and it might tear apart this McLaren team. We will see in the end. You know, like I said, there's still a lot of time left in the season. Anything could happen. I mean, maybe my Ferrari team performs a little better. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz will really pick things up, and they end up winning the Constructors' Championship. I doubt. But anyway, you know, I mean, we can see Lando Norris. We'll most likely be seeing Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both on the podium for the next few months. I feel like that they can push past the awkwardness that was Hungary and really just kind of come together as a team and look for the future, because their future is bright. Both of these racers are still super young. These drivers have a lot more left in the tank for them. I mean, who knows? Maybe they race until they're 40 years old, like a Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. And if that's the case, well, I would love to see this duo together for, I don't know, the rest of the 2020s going into the 2030s, right? I mean, I'm not a McLaren fan, but I do like what they have going on. But like I said, that's about it for this video. Catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.